In today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into the implementation and utilization of proper stress management techniques when it comes to people who are in the process of quitting nicotine, cannabis, alcohol, stimulants, and other substances. And when I say a deep dive, like anytime I pull out the whiteboard, I mean we are really going to cover every possible aspect of stress management. This is a super important topic to cover because after several years of coaching literally hundreds, if not thousands of people to help them quit consuming substances, I've identified improper stress management techniques as a major cause of a drug relapse. And look, if you've been around my channel for a while or you've been in our one-on-one programs, you know we don't use the word relapse. What we're really referring to is a person's conscious decision, a person's choice to continue the consumption of substances once again. But nonetheless, improper stress management often leads to relapse. Area number two, why it's so important to get a grasp on this, is because having proper stress management skills is a key to being successful in your personal life, including with your kids, your family, and your relationships, and in your professional life. With that being said, if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a physician, you work in real estate, you're an attorney, or you're a parent, a high-performance parent struggling with a child who has a substance use disorder, I want you to check out the link in our video description to learn more about our protocol that is specifically designed for you. What we need to realize when it comes to stress management in early sobriety is that what we are asking for is not an absence of stress in our lives. What it is we're really seeking is the tools, traits, and characteristics so we have more strength to deal with that stress. And if I were to be more specific, what we're actually talking about here is a way to increase our stress tolerance. So everyone has a certain tolerance for the amount of stress that they can handle on a given day. And a lot of people who use substances think that drugs are helping them with the stress. Today I'm going to show you why it's not. But we have to figure out how can we increase our tolerance for stress. Not necessarily how do we eliminate stress. Because if you are a business owner, if you are a parent and you got 3 or 4 kids running around the house, you're always going to be subjected to stress. There's no way around that. And I see so many people go into addiction recovery being told that, hey, you're going to quit using drugs, all the stress is going to go away and life is going to be roses. And it just sets such a false expectation. Okay, so ST stands for stress tolerance, okay? Stress tolerance, all right? Now, think of it this way. Your stress tolerance is comparable to having fuel in a car. Think of your stress tolerance as like a tank of gas, okay? And you have to drive around and do a bunch of things today. You got to take the kids to soccer practice. You have to pick the kids up to school. You have to go in and put out that fire that came up in your business today. You're a busy medical doctor. You treated 30, 40 patients and there were some emergencies that came up. The insurance carriers called complaining about some of the tests you want to order. Now, throughout the course of the day, all these things are depleting that fuel in your gas tank. They're wearing down your stress tolerance. And what we have to ask ourselves is cannabis, is nicotine, is alcohol doing anything that's adding to that gas tank, that's adding to your ability to handle stress, your stress tolerance? Or are these substances and the consequences of consuming these substances depleting our stress tolerance? That's just a question that I want you to pause and think about as we go throughout today's conversation. Now, this is where you really need to start, okay? Cannabis, alcohol, nicotine, it is not a way to cope or deal with stress. I cannot tell you the amount of times I personally and the amount of people I've worked with over the years who have been told by their doctor, by their psychiatrist, by their psychologist that they are using drugs, okay, to cope with stress or something that they have going on in their life. And this is so wrong. And it's not to the detriment of the therapist or the doctor or whoever told you that. They're just not properly trained in addiction recovery. Many of them aren't. What they're actually doing when they tell a person this is they're validating the perceived benefit of consuming cannabis, consuming alcohol, or smoking cigarettes. I smoke cigarettes and I smoke weed because I'm stressed. I go see a therapist. The therapist tells me I'm coping with stress by smoking weed and consuming cigarettes. They just validated that belief for me that consuming these drugs is helping me relieve stress. So we have to leave today's conversation crystal clear that drugs do not have that benefit. They are not a tool that is actually helping you cope with stress and arrive upon solutions to the problems that you're facing. Do not give drugs that benefit, because if you see perceived value or actual value in substance use, it's going to make quitting 1,000 times harder. And I see this time and time again when people are seeking help with this. What drugs really are actually a distraction. And I made a video recently, I'll link it at the end of today's video, where I talked a little bit about how I'm currently dealing 100% sober with an immense amount of stress in my life. A family member got a cancer diagnosis, my wife had a miscarriage, our business and our taxes had a little bit of a bumpy road that worked itself out. But there are numerous things that happened to me. I lost 2 employees at my private practice in the same day. All of these bad things happened, and you can comfortably deal with them sober. You can actually deal with them better being sober than you can using drugs. But all drugs did in the past for me when I would deal with stuff was provide a distraction. And the really sad thing that I see when I'm working with people is when they get really deep into substance use, they begin to prefer the stress of substance use and that distraction to actually trying to solve the problems that they are currently facing in their lives. So all weed is, all alcohol is, all the stimulants are, is a distraction from the real stress in your life that probably needs attention more than anything else. The solution to the stress, okay, is not going to be in the thing that's causing the problem. For so many people, the side effects and consequences of continued substance use, the damage to their physical health, the damage to their finances, the damage to their relationships, these are being caused by continuing to use the drug. So the thing that causes the problem is not going to be the coping tool or the solution to the problem. Stress is not an absence of the drug. This is another thing that I see so many addiction recovery and sobriety programs get wrong. They tell a person, and you've maybe been told this by a medical professional or a therapist or whomever, that you're stressed because you're going through withdrawal, that you're stressed because weed was your coping tool and now you lost your best friend and that you're grieving the loss of it. What they're inadvertently doing is framing the drug as being the solution to the stress, and how they're wiring your mindset, unintentionally in many cases, is that you're now making your stress about the absence of a drug, instead of actually acknowledging all the other things going on in your life that are causing that stress. This is a technique that we work on with people inside our one-on-one addiction exit protocol. We try and do everything we can to stop their life from revolving around substance use or the lack thereof substance consumption. Your stress is not a deficit of the substance. So do not make it that. Do not make that mistake that I made thousands of times over and over again. I want to hit you guys with a parable because your beliefs matter, right? If someone's telling you that you're a powerless addict and that you have no control over this thing, that belief is eventually going to become a reality. And that's why so many people in addiction recovery live in constant fear of this imaginary thing called relapse. Beliefs matter. And let me hit you with a parable. So this is the story of, I think, the Chinese farmer. Maybe it's a Buddhist parable, I'm not sure. But basically, A man had a horse and the horse ran away. And all the villagers in the town said, "Oh my gosh, that's so terrible, your horse ran away." And the man said, "Maybe." Then the horse came back and it brought with it 3 more horses. All the villagers in the town said, "Sir, you're so blessed, you're so lucky, you have 3 more horses." And the man said, "Maybe." Then the man's son hopped on one of the horses, fell off, and broke his leg. And everyone was saying to the man, "This is so horrible, I can't believe your son has a broken leg, this is the worst thing in the world." And the man said, "Maybe." Then the military comes around because a war broke out, and they go to draft the man's son, and the man's son is unable to go to war because he has this broken leg. And everyone in the village says, "Oh my gosh, thank God your son is home safe from his broken leg. Look how fortunate you are." And the man says, "Maybe." This parable is very closely related to a technique that I teach people inside the addiction exit protocol to overcome substance use and cravings, called the maybe technique. And maybe you can start to figure it out based on that parable. The perception of stress matters more than the stress itself. There was a study published in 2011 called Perception Matters. And basically what this study concluded was that people, and this is a mindset problem, not a physiological problem, who view stress as a troubling thing, as a bad thing, have poor health, they have poor performance, both in their family life and in their work career, and they ultimately suffer an early death, usually linked to things like heart attack or stroke or cardiovascular disease. How you perceive stress, your beliefs surrounding an event, and whether or not you view that circumstance as stressful or not is going to play a major role in how well you are able to manage or mitigate that stress. Proper stress management starts with your belief system. And a lot of people have a very flawed mindset when it comes to this. Another thing too that I always do when I'm working with people is they'll be at the 2-week mark, okay? 2 weeks into quitting cannabis, alcohol, whatever it is. And I'll always ask them, all right, tell me about the positives, but more so, tell me about what's gone wrong in your life. And I work with a lot of business professionals. I work with a lot of parents. I work with a lot of teens too, of parents who are business professionals. And something always happens, right? Because you're running a business, you're managing a family, you're managing a home, you're a caretaker for your parents, whatever it may be. And it's guaranteed that something's going to happen. But what matters is your perception of the event, because that's going to dictate how well you're able to manage it. And it could actually add years onto your life. Now, another thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to stress management is the question of, can or can't I control this situation? And I hope you understand what I'm doing here, because so much of stress management has to do with how we frame it. If you can control the situation and you are stressed about things that are within your control, you have to start to attack it. You have to stop procrastinating. You have to start taking action. And for a lot of people who are addicted to especially cannabis, that's a major problem, because cannabis tends to decrease motivation, increase procrastination, and actually prevent people from taking action on the things in life that matters most. Or at least that's what I saw with myself and literally hundreds of people that I coached. But you need to say, is this within my control? And if it is, you have to attack the problem. You're gonna start feeling better once you do. Step number 2 is you have to assess whether or not this is something that's out of your control. If the situation, like a family member of mine being diagnosed with cancer, and I want to make it clear, there still are aspects of that are within me and my family's control. We can choose the medical providers, we can get second opinions, we can assess the different treatment options. But when we look at that, if it's something that's truly out of our control, you just have to learn to let go and move on. And here's where cannabis, especially cannabis, I see this all the time with alcohol too. Drugs prevent action and they promote or create rumination. So many times I would be part of an addiction recovery community and all of the conversation was just a series of ruminating events that people were dealing with. There was never any plan to move forward. There was only hours and hours of ruminating thoughts about things that happened in the past that in many cases were long gone and over with. This is a major problem with substance use consumption. It prevents action and it promotes rumination. And if we're sitting there ruminating on things that we can't control, your stress is going to go through the roof. And ultimately, it could lead to an early death, like not even kidding on that. Now, again, if you can attack the problem and it's something that's within your control, that's what you're going to want to do. And I'll give you another area too of stress that I didn't put in this presentation. So many people will come to our programs and they feel like they're out of options. They're like, I tried quitting cold turkey, I tried therapy, I tried 12 steps, and they're like, I tried everything, I'm out of options. A major source of stress for people who are struggling with substance use, this was definitely the case for me, is people who feel like they've done everything and there's no options left. When you feel like you're out of options, you start to feel hopeless. You start to lose faith in yourself. And I'm literally making today's video for you so that doesn't happen to you. Okay, now we have to go back and answer the question of how do we increase our stress tolerance? How do we increase the size of that gas tank so we can put more fuel in it, so we can get more places and deal with more problems day to day? I'm not asking for the absence of stress in my life. I'm asking for the strength to manage it. And I do that by increasing my stress tolerance. Now, there's a few things that you can do. One, you have to remove the barriers that are causing stress in your life. If it's obvious that drug consumption, cannabis consumption, alcohol consumption, abusing stimulants is creating side effects and consequences that are increasing the stress in your life, you have to remove those barriers. The moment you remove those things, your stress tolerance is going to start to go up. You're going to be better able to manage the family stress, the work stress, the relationship stress, the physical health problems that you might have. Okay, next, we have to start to implement discipline. When we are disciplined, we live the life that we want to achieve. When we're not disciplined, we wind up living a life that we ultimately don't want. How do you become more disciplined? You do it through the implementation of easy go-to systems that are applicable in your life. And this is exactly what I have helped hundreds of business professionals, doctors, attorneys, this, that, it doesn't matter, entrepreneurs build inside our one-on-one addiction exit protocol. Discipline comes from easy to follow systems. In order to be more disciplined, we have to remove the barriers so we can implement those systems at a better rate. That's exactly what we teach people about. Now, some of the things that I've talked about, just that I can think of, nutrition, sleep, fitness, organization, family management, house management. As I'm making this video right now, there is a lawn care company cutting my lawn. There's someone cleaning the pool outside. My nanny is watching my son. They just went on a walk around the neighborhood. And I know tomorrow we have a cleaning lady coming. And listen, I was at a point in my life once where I couldn't afford all of these services. Trust me, I was once there. But like so many people I've worked with, I was recently working with a physician who owns a bunch of private practices. And they were telling me about all this stress in their life. They got 3 kids, their house is kind of falling apart because it's always chaotic, all this stuff. Their wife chooses to work full-time because they're also a medical professional. And I said to them, I was like, listen, you have to start managing stress better. And one of the quickest ways you can do that is by dispersing your income to get help with the kids, to get help around the house, to get lawn service and pool service care. I would happily pay for those things. Those are the last expenses that I would cut out of my life because they make my life so much stressful. And they actually allow me to buy back my time to perform more at work or to spend more time with my wife and kid doing things that I actually really want to be doing. So family management, home management, nutrition, sleep, fitness, organization. These are all things that you can implement into systems that can ultimately decrease your stress. Actions that are a net positive to your goals are ultimately going to result in the expectations you set for yourself in sobriety becoming a reality. again, this isn't to bash on therapy, but I've had so many times where like a therapist, they'd be like, oh, have you tried cold showers? Because that's what was popular on YouTube at the time. Or have you tried adult coloring books? Have you tried meditation or reading? Have you tried deep breathing? And here's the thing, although all of those things can be beneficial to a person when they maybe have a craving, they had nothing to do with the things that I expected to achieve in my sobriety. The actions that you're taking should be moving you towards a net positive in your life. And if you're taking actions on a day-to-day basis that match up with your expectations, you're moving in line with your purpose, your stress is going to significantly decrease. And so many programs fall short on this because they give a blanket approach versus an individualized approach to that person. Now, I want you to think about something here, okay? Let's say for a second that you don't quit consuming substances. You watched today's video, you thought the information was great, and you keep smoking weed, you keep drinking alcohol, you keep watching adult media content. What's presumably gonna happen? Your health is gonna go down, your anxiety regarding your health is gonna go up, your confidence is gonna go down, especially if you've told yourself 1,000 times before, today's day one, and then you've backtracked on day one over and over again. That's gonna hurt your confidence, which can damage your work performance. It can damage your relationship with your family. That's gonna damage your discipline. Your critical thinking skills might start to go down because you're so focused on substance use. Your energy levels are definitely going to be depleting because there's no one who's struggling with substance use who would say it's not an exhausting experience. Relationship stress is going to go up, sleep is going to go down, and maybe cannabis substance use or alcohol substance use is having a negative impact on your diet, your self-care routines, your motivation, and your finances. Think of this, you don't quit drugs, you experience all these negative side effects. What's that doing to your stress tolerance? You are putting all of your stress tolerance into managing a substance use disorder, and you are absolutely plummeting it, leaving nothing left over in the gas tank for the family stress, the business stress, the physical health problem stress that you may or may not be dealing with. You have nothing left in the gas tank anymore. Now on the flip side, if we wanted to increase our stress tolerance, when you quit using drugs, what often happens? I see this happen in 99.99% of people that I work with. Increased mental clarity, increased confidence, because now you started to regain trust in your word to yourself, right? How do you expect anyone else to trust you if you can't even trust yourself? A harsh lesson that I learned in my active substance use and on the flip side on my sobriety. Now, increased energy, decreased anxiety about health problems. I've mentioned this individual before. Currently in our programs, we have a really high level individual who owns a marketing agency. Brilliant business, does amazing work. But he's spending so much of his day worried about health anxiety complications relating to, in this person's case, it's vaping nicotine. Imagine if all that stress was freed up and they were able to focus it into their job, into actually getting back into shape, going into the gym, putting it into nutrition, losing weight, right? Your income will probably go up. You'll be living in line with your purpose, right? You'll be living to your maximum potential, not at the 30 or 50 or 60% that you're performing with on drugs, right? Imagine all this happens after you quit using substances. Your stress tolerance for everything else in life is actually going to go up. Now, if you are a business professional, an entrepreneur, you work in real estate, you work in finance, you're a medical doctor, you have a doctorate, or you're a high-performance parent with a child who's suffering, we have a program specifically for you. Check out the link in the video description. I also put in the pinned comment to learn more about our addiction exit protocol. It's a one-on-one program where you work with me directly and we go even deeper into stuff just like this. Until next time.